Hello and greetings. Welcome to our second Roundtable Panel, GatherVerse Summit 2026. We come off the heels of a very high-powered fireside chat with James and Russell, and of course, not to mention the first roundtable, which was quite very insightful, and this is gonna take it a notch higher. Our roundtable panel for tonight is human values, carrying them through accelerating change. With me, I have a group of experts from around the world who are going to help us demystify this topic. And as we get into the topic, I would request you, my panelists, please introduce yourselves. Tell us who you are, what inspired you to join us today. And until called upon, I request you kindly mute your mics. And I will start with you, Emily. Tell us who you are, where you're joining us from.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Lynn. Good to see you again. I'm joining from Vancouver, Canada. I am a certified life coach specializing on the intersection of psychology and technology. So I specifically look at how content and algorithms fuel our biases. And I teach people through my digital wellness seminar and programs how to monitor yourself and each other and our online spaces for bias and then what to do about it, because I recognize it's an emotional thing. And I'm curious about how this panel will go today, because I think values is a really important part of all of this, which is something I talk about as well. So I'm excited to hear everybody's expertise today.
Emily, it's always an honor to have you back. And of course, we look forward to listening what you have to say about bias and how it intersects with human values. Camilla, this is not your first time. You're home right now, but tell us who you are and what inspired you to join us today.
Yeah, so my name is Camille Sanders, CEO of Greater Than Equal, and I do strategy advising for large scale multi stakeholder collaborations. And I work at the intersection of sustainability, technology, and humanity. So basically, I help innovative leaders work across differences so that we can all work together to make an impact on the world. So values is ingrained in everything that I do.
Right. We're happy to have you once again. Thank you for joining us. Teresa, tell us who you are. What inspired you to join us?
Hi, everybody. My name is Teresa Grant Narsman. I am the founder of an organization called Make a Difference Now. I have a background in marketing in the Silicon Valley, as well as running this nonprofit that I've run for 17 years. And what we do is we provide access to quality education for disadvantaged youth and women around the globe. We do that through scholarships, and then we also have a career training program through an LMS, a learning management software system, to kickstart them into their careers. And really what brought me into this discussion today was what I've learned and is through my whole journey is human values don't disappear during disruption. I feel like they get exposed. And the real question isn't whether we have values, it's whether our systems reward them.
All right, Teresa, you're welcome once again. And I believe this is going to expose whether we have them or we are still instilling them. Thank you so much. And Antonio, over to you. Tell us who you are and what inspired you to join us today.
My name is Antonio Taylor. I'm the founder of Tailored Enterprise. I have been in technology for about 26 years in the corporate space, and I started my own company to kind of bring some of that executive level expertise to small businesses, nonprofits, and entrepreneurs who typically can't afford high value C-suite executives, but they still should be able to get that same level of service. And so I work with them. I also am an author. So wrote a book called Stop Trying to Be a Leader last year. And the premise of the book is to teach people to stop trying to be who they already are. Just embrace who you are. We've all had God-given abilities and talents. We don't have to listen to imposter syndrome when we feel like we're inadequate. We don't have to get validation from other people or affirmation. You have some God-given gifts that have been designed in you from the start. And it's important that we own those. In every room we walk into, we own that room as well. I like to talk, so I just joined the room today just to kind of hear from everybody else and provide whatever level of insight I can.
Antonio, you're in the right place. This is a place for people who want to express. And congratulations on your book. We look forward to have what it has in store in regards to this topic of today. Christian, over to you. What inspired you to join here, and who are you?
Hi, thanks so much for having me. My name is Christian Ortiz. I am the CEO and founder of Justice AI. I developed the world's first AI framework that solves for the bias problem. And I'm also the CEO of Mod Atlas Media, a diversity, equity, and inclusion media space that helps organizations develop inclusive language and inclusive marketing so they hit the mark with their messaging, which is extremely important, especially as they're diversifying their markets. And so I'm very excited to be here and was extremely excited to have this conversation about values, especially as we enter this AI space.
Christian, you're very welcome. And it seems bias is going to be on our radar today. And WeCreate you. I think this is your first time, and this is the right place to encourage you to be here more often. And Salvation, tell us who you are and where you're joining us from. What inspired you to join us?
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Lynn. It's so good to be here among brilliant speakers. I'm Salvation Chigereoka. I'm joining from Lagos Island, Nigeria, specifically. And my inspiration for joining today's summit is that I want to learn and I also want to contribute because the conversation we're about to have it's very important. We cannot negotiate on values, especially when it comes to humanity. So it's so good to be here. Thank you very much.
Salvation, thank you for joining us all the way from Lagos. Hope you're keeping warm there, and welcome. Justine, this is not your first time. We gladly welcome you once again. But tell us who you are and what inspired you to join us.
Absolutely. Lynn and the GatherVerse team and universe, thank you for having me back again. I am calling in from sunny South Florida. Um, and I truly believe, Lynn, that AI doesn't remove human responsibility, it increases it, right? So my name is Justine Clarke. I am a product leader and a co-founder of WeCreate. We partner with different organizations to integrate AI thoughtfully into their operations and going for that efficiency, but not only that, right? Also to protect dignity, trust, and bring clarity to that day to day. What I care about really deeply is making sure that as our systems are evolving, we're not seeing our values get erased, opted out, automated out of the process. I really believe that as we continue to build, especially in this AI age, access must expand. Like it's non-negotiable. It must expand, not narrow. Deep access to like tools, to the education, to the opportunity. It should reach every community, not just a
Yes.
select few. And so it begins with conversations like this one. And I'm honored that you've brought me into the conversation.
All right, Justine, you're very, very welcome. Now, to set the stage, I know we've had the first roundtable panel, the first fireside chat, and taking it a little bit notch higher, we have human values. Each majority of you have mentioned the importance of human values, and I remember Teresa saying we are going to expose if we have them first of all, or we just mentioned them. But let's bring it into context. How do we define human values? I am from Africa. The people from Oceania, the people from Asia, the people from many parts of the world. So, how do we define human values globally and individually in this rapidly evolving society? I want to hear from each and every one of you. And I guess I will start with you, Antonio, briefly. What is human values to you?
To me, human values. I think you mentioned something globally. I don't know if there's a global explanation of what human values are. I think they're the DNA of who you are as an individual, and I think that's shaped based on your culture, where you were born, where you were raised, the things that you were brought up around kind of help shape what those human values are. We all have some commonality around some human values that we all should adhere to. We should just be nice. My grandmother used to say it's nice just to be nice, right? There's some things we should just do. But within that framework, the reality of that, some of that still gets shaped by our environment, right? And as we get older, and what we're starting to see even with the AI space is some of those in social media, some of those ugly values are starting to come out, right? That may not have been prevalent, many years ago, that were always inside of people, but now we're just allowing them to be seen. So I think your values are innately who you are, but I think a lot of that is shaped by your environment.
Yes, environment. I get that perspective. Christian, what is your say? What is your take on human values? What is it to you?
It's a very interesting concept and conversation to have, especially as Antonio pointed out, it is a global perspective. I am a decolonial social scientist for context, so I study the world before, during, and after European colonization. So I take a look at the impact that it's had all around the world, and I help society connect the dots on how our biases manifest today, our harmful biases through colonization. And so I've been able to operationalize this decolonial perspective, critical race theory that we've studied to kind of really hit the nail on the head in terms of looking at values as something that really reflects collective liberation. And so I try to help individuals understand that no matter where you are in the world, oppression shouldn't be an opinion. It shouldn't be an option. It shouldn't be debatable. And so if that's the case, then what does the world look like in a truly inclusive world where everybody has a seat at the table, has a perspective, and really we focus on the well-being of each and every person on this planet?
Yes, and I absolutely concur with the perspective of well-being. That is one of our standards here at GatherVerse. So, thank you for sharing that. Salvation, I'm dragging the thread to you. I want to hear what is human values to you?
Yeah, thank you very much, Lynn. I would say for me that human values are behaviors, characters that apply to you and me, and that can still keep us safe. And so I would take it from this perspective of if we belong to a community and we want a common benefit, we have to place value for ourselves for what we want to achieve to be able to achieve that. So these are like behavior patterns that we as people, as individuals, need to have. It could be a form of moral conduct, it could be a form of character that we all need to have to be able to, treat yourself right, build the right product, think of the right designs, and create the right kind of narrative generally.
Yes,
That's
so good. Oh, cool. I love when you mentioned moral standards of conduct. That stood out for me. But Justine, over to you. What is values to you?
Oh, it's a great question, Lynn. For me, human values, they're more the principles, right? That define how we move and how we define what's fair, what's, right, what's progress or even a harm. As in brought up as well, like the decolonized way of looking at it. To me, it also at a base level, it's almost like what's right, who matters, and at times also who is responsible. And for me, it drives very heavily back to like our values is not just philosophical, something that we speak to. You often are going to really see that in the actions. I believe doctors, someone has mentioned it earlier. You're going to see it in our actions and how we foundationally move. So to me, human values are deeply held principles. And some of them are things like integrity, fairness, responsibility, especially within this AI age that we are
Yes.
in. Mm-hmm.
Definitely responsibility. We're going to come to that. I think it's a very weighty subject and definitely worth touching. Teresa, what is values to you?
Yeah, I really have been reflecting on this even more as everybody's been speaking. I think core human values are defined less by what we say and more by what we refuse to compromise. It's easy to communicate that we do have values. We all want to have values, but I think it comes down to when the pressure cooker is on and what we refuse to compromise. Now, what that looks like within a nonprofit is we go back to our mission, and people are constantly trying to push our mission. Donors can do that, students can do that, partners can do that. And then when it comes to AI, there is that value of, are we being honest? Are we being ethical? We often focus on the speed of trying to get things done, but we don't always go back to, wait, who am I and what am I really saying here? And is this ethical? So even with our students, when they're communicating to their sponsors, we want them to not rely on AI completely. They become robotic. What the sponsors have fallen in love with is the individual. And so it really tests us. We don't want everybody to be sounding the exact same, right? Who are we? And we have to hold on to who we are. It's not easy as much when we're being tested, and we can rely on AI. Do we want to be robotic or do we want to be authentic? Is a question sometimes. And who do we prioritize when resources are limited? So,
yeah, Teresa, what I'm getting from you is human values are being tested right now, right? And this is the time as humanity to prove ourselves that we have values and this is what we stand for. But I'm going to come to that maybe a little bit sooner, because we have a generation that perhaps doesn't know or understand what human values mean. They all sound the same thing because they have grown up in an automated world. But anyway, that's a conversation for another chance. But Camila, I want to hear from you. What is human values to you?
Sure. So to me, human values are what we hold close to us. I think that every individual has a set of values, and a lot of times it's self-conscious. So I love what you said, Teresa, that it comes out when you almost least expect it, when you're tested, your values really come out. And also values can be spoken, meaning like written, like you said, in a mission or within a strategy. But we also have social norms that are accepted. Like we all believe in trust and empathy and innovation and all these different values that we say are important, right? We say are important, right? But I think, and what I'll add to the conversation is that I think as the world shifts, our values shift. And what I mean by that is not that our values necessarily change, but there is different degrees. So for example, I'll give a value of self-sovereignty. Maybe way back before the internet, that was a lower priority. But now with the internet and people's data, and can we own our data? What can we be ourselves? Are we controlled by other people? Do we have autonomy? That self-sovereignty value has skyrocketed, right? With AI, different innovation, technological innovation that we have. So I think it evolves over time too.
Thank you for bringing that perspective that human values evolve and we're seeing it happen. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. Emily, over to you. What is human values to you?
I mean, I went last. I feel like everyone said everything already. I feel like I resonate with everything everybody said. And I like the image of our values being the pillars of our identity. And these pillars can be as strong as we want them to, and they can also be weak enough to break down from external forces. It's also possible for people to imprint pillars into us. It's possible for us to have values passed on to us, either through socialization and just as we learn through culture, but also when you look at technology and you look at how many more people are spending time in the surface level consciousness where you're not fully aware of your whole self. So you open to being impressioned by all of these messages coming in through content. And when we are scrolling, we just kind of switch into this different state and we're not fully aware of the messages that are being passed on to us. And I tell people that having grounding on your own values that you're actively choosing for yourself is such a key part of not being steered or swayed, and being able to have checks and balances for yourself and for each other based off of our values. So when you're going to react to something, you can ask yourself, does this reflect who I want to be? And we can check that by asking if it reflects our values. But yeah, what about you, Lynn? What do you feel about
You
values?
know, actually, before I even answer what you had to say, I have a follow up with what you just said, and just building to the next topic, and that is, you've mentioned when we are scrolling, when we have internalizing all these messages that are coming in, our subconscious mind is open, but we're not aware of what it's taking in, and that is where we define our values. But I just have a follow up. What about kids who haven't even learned yet to define the values, and they're watching all this content? Some form of content are harmful in form of cartoons. They look harmless. But when you look at them in-depthly, what is entering their subconscious mind, you definitely know there's harm here, there's a danger here. So how do such vulnerable communities or vulnerable people protect their minds if they haven't even defined their values? Emily and Teresa, I'm handing this over to you.
This is a very good question and a great point. And it speaks to the responsibility that we have as a community to assist our younger generations, because we learn our values from other people first before we're able to understand what that means. And then we start shaping our own independent identities. As we get older, we learn what we like, what we believe in, what makes us angry, that kind of thing. So with our kids, they do need a certain amount of protection, especially with the kind of content that's coming online from certain messages. But in order to do that, we have to agree as a collective what we want the values to be that we instill in our kids. And that can be challenging in itself. But I feel like some of them are just basic, like being kind for one, and being accepting and open seem basic to a lot of us, but to some people that's really scary. So it is a challenge, for sure. But Teresa, what do you think?
Oh, I love this question, and I think it's timely. And it's not just with the youth that we help with our organization Make a Difference Now, but I see it also with my kids. So it's a little personal. That's why I was responding and going, oh, wow, this is a good one. Recently, my kids were watching YouTube, and they talked about a few facts that they learned, and it was on YouTube. So they felt like that was absolutely the facts, right? And there was a little bit of animation, so it was kid oriented, but AI streaming to a lot of just, I don't even know if people really thought through what they were putting together when they presented this. But you may know about the myth that at 3 a.m. Siri and Google talk to each other, and the kids wanted to stay up at 3 a.m. and they wanted to listen to this, and that's one thing that had happened. I said, no, it's really not real. Another thing I would go back to with that question is, with values, how do we monitor this with kids? And I would say we have to mirror it. We have to mirror everything we want the kids to be brought up with. If we feel that this is not okay, we don't engage in it. And I think that's the hardest thing. If we don't want our kids on the screens, and we're on our screens all the time, you have heard this conversation before, but it is so hard for us as parents, as guardians, as, anyone who is around a kid. We have to mirror what we want them to be.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much. I believe mirroring Kids learn from what you do 100%. If you drink water, next time you'll see them, they'll try to take a glass of water and drink from it. If they see you on the screen all the time, you cannot tell them not to be on the screen because they see you doing it every time. So thank you for even bringing it out. Let's widen this lens. Antonio, Christian, and Camilla, I want to hear from you. What signals indicate values are at risk during periods of disruption? I'll start with you, Camilla, and then Antonio, Christian.
Sure. So the conversation that was just had made me think the huge risk is people looking on the internet and just accepting things as being true. And for my kids, it's TikTok, right? It's like, oh, this is facts. I have done no research, but a certain number of people say it and I think it's true, right? So, but that's true for adults too, right? We see something, we're exposed to it, and we kind of just accept that, right? So that is definitely a risk. But I also think that as I'm thinking about this question, I'm really like focused on the world that we live in today. So some of the things that I would think is like lack of consensus. A lot of things are happening, especially within leaders, that we don't necessarily agree on. The society as a whole doesn't have consensus. They're just operating on their own, which also goes to lack of integrity, right? People saying they're going to do something and then they do something totally different, which also erodes trust with our leaders, right? So there's lack of trust that we're talking about, like, what are risk factors? Lack of consistency, lack of trust, lack of integrity, and also, which has always been the case, lack of transparency, right? We don't know what's real, what's not real. We don't know how people came to different conclusions. A lot of things is just done in the dark from society as a whole, right? And so there's lack of transparency where we cannot build that trust between people. And I think all of those things are, some of the things that put us at risk when we're in this disruption.
Yes, that is absolutely correct. Antonio, what's your lens? What do you have to say? Camilla mentioned something about lack of transparency, and it's really hard to tell who to trust and who not to trust. But Antonio, tell us your view.
Yeah, I would go even deeper and say the loss of identity. I think we are living in a time in a space today where most of us see people that we thought we knew, and then all of a sudden we see a behavior and it's like, okay, where did that come from? Like, I had no clue that. And so, and I think with the social media, and I think with everything that's being ingested in people's brain, we weren't designed to be able to have that much data into our brains to be able to handle it. That's why our subconscious takes over, right? And so what I'm starting to see is there's this groupthink, right? And so now you lose your identity and even your own values and purpose. Your identity is based on what somebody says. And so when you start looking at the risk, I think the biggest risk is we aren't even ourselves anymore. And I always tell this analogy: we can all go to a sporting event together, and without knowing anybody around us, we're high-fiving, we're hugging, we're all cheering for the same team, right? We're all under synergy, and we immediately leave. And the moment we leave that stadium, we're at odds, ready to fight because of our, neighborhoods we grew up in or our political beliefs. And it's like, wait, did you just code switch that fast? Right. And so I think that pretty much what happened. I think the biggest risk that I see is, even going back to the transparency, you just don't even know who's real anymore. You just have no idea about an individual's identity anymore, which makes it hard to trust them. It makes it hard to believe in them. It makes it hard to follow them. And it's just because we've gotten into this groupthink mode where as long as one person says it, that's the gospel, that's the Bible. And now that's being infiltrated into our kids. I heard somebody say, hey, if it's on TikTok, it's true. And I'm like, when did that become like the norm? I mean, I grew up, in a Southern Black Baptist home. I watched Popeye every single day. I know I couldn't go outside and fight, even though there was a fight every single day happening on the cartoon, right? And it's like, when do we lose ourselves in what we're consuming? And so I think for me, the biggest risk is us in losing our identity and who we are.
Yeah, I appreciate that you made it very concrete. Justine, I see you, but Christian, I want to hear you. What is your lens on this particular subject?
Absolutely. I agree with a lot of what everybody's saying, for sure. As a father of four myself, I've always tried to implement this idea of understanding for my kids, to help them understand that society as a whole operates through conditioning, and we are conditioned to believe so much from our surroundings through media and education and all of these things. So from a decolonial lens, I interrogate these systems that we're born into that we didn't ask for. And I really take a look at the foundation of what we're born into, and really just encourage people to have the conversations at home, to question everything, to really interrogate power and interrogate impact and be intentional. I think these conversations are extremely important in the household, to be able to really identify what our roles are in society, so that we can make a better impact overall, and really just have a broader sense of what's happening in the world, so that what we take in, we understand is trying to condition us, and therefore we can make a better decision in how we move forward.
Christian, you brought it very sharply. But I have a follow-up before I come to you, Justine. I remember when I was in my doing my bachelor's, one of the lessons I learned is classical condition, how you can condition animals to behave and work in a certain routine. Is that happening to humans, and who is behind that, and how does someone become aware where they're conditioned? Christian, briefly, and then I come to Justin.
For sure. We are born in, especially here in North America, in a system that's controlled by Western sources. And so the global North, and so the information that we're being fed are controlled by the people in media, to the education. I also spent 25 years in the Southern United States, and so I understand how education has been whitewashed, for lack of a better word, to erase histories. And there's a lot of epistemicide happening, where epistemic knowledge is being erased intentionally. And so I think the powers that be are a select few who have just tons of money, and who are creating these systems that are pumping so much information into our brains, into the brains of our children as well.
All right, thank you for highlighting that. That was beautifully made aware, and I hope everyone is taking notes on this. Justine, what is your perspective? What is your lens?
Mylan. I'm going to start with, I agree with Christian on, he mentioned impact, right? And I agree with it from the fact that impact is a real measure. I think we can definitely say intentions. We have certain intentions. I'm going to speak of it from the lens of what we're doing with technology and AI, and lean into that a little bit more. We have certain intentions, and that can certainly be good, but I believe that you get the real value in the outcomes, right? And what that means for us is that if you look at it from an impact lens, it really forces us to move beyond what we said we were going to do, and like what actually happens. To the general question, I take a product lens when I look at this question, and what that means is I look at it in trade-offs. So I feel like values are at risk when there are certain trade-offs that step into the room. We're hearing a lot of conversations around speed and urgency, and there is nothing inherently wrong with that. But I would say check to see if that trade-off is like reflection. Are we being urgent over reflecting? Are we being urgent over retrospecting on, what the impact of our decisions are and what we're doing? Another trade-off that comes to mind is empathy. I think Teresa had mentioned that, empathy. But, in trying to get that speed and be efficient, are we kind of overriding our empathy or trading that off? And so for me, I would say values are at risk when you start to see certain trade-offs enter the conversation or the room. And the biggest one for me personally is access, right? We're in a space where if we're not careful, voices can narrow, perspectives can really, I'm trying to find the word I'm looking for here, but yeah, perspectives can, like, only certain perspectives can be brought to the table. And I feel like that's sort of what, is it Chris? I don't know, I'm sorry, but Christian is getting at. But like, yeah, if you don't have all of those perspectives at the table, then you have only certain voices, you have only certain access to something that is going to ultimately shape the conversation of society. So yeah, to me, we have to pay attention to that, and make sure we keep our values in mind as we go ahead.
Yes, Justin, that was a very healthy divergence. What are we trading off? You only know it's risky when you're trading it off with something that is valuable to the community. But let me just shift gears for some time here. Salvation, we have a conflict here. So what signals indicates values? Okay, let me take it to the next question. Where do individual and collective values conflict, and how are these tensions resolved? Salvation, and anyone who wants to chime in on this debate, this beautiful conflict that is just right in front of us. But Salvation, tell us your thoughts.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think personally that we all have our individual values that will not be agreed on a collective table. I have my personal values. The next person around me would have a different values. And these are because our upbringings may be different, our cultures may be different, my environment may be different from the next person's environment. So there are likeliness of having conflicts when we come together as people. But then it all matters what is the end goal. What do we want to achieve when we come together collectively? What is the goal of our coming together? What do we want to make happen by coming together? And that's where we have to drop our guards, get to understand ourselves as people, as individuals, and take that understanding and focus that understanding on the goal of the mission we're gathered together for. And I would say another angle would be identity, just as Anthony mentioned. And identity is very important because when you have this goal that you want to achieve as a people, as individuals, or as a group, it's very important to know that, okay, I value my respect. Does the next person value my respect when we come together collectively? I value my space. Do you value my privacy? So our individual identity has its role to play when we come collectively. And conflicts can only be erased when we understand ourselves, value identity, respect each other's identity, and find a collective way to be more transparent ourselves, relate with ourselves. I think that way we can reduce conflict. I won't use the word erase totally because I
Yes.
also have this perspective that conflict is good. There are scenarios where conflict will reveal things that should be addressed. And conflict can also make me understand the next person and the next person understand me better. So I also think that it can reduce conflict, and also transparency has a very key role to play in that area. The more
Yes.
transparent people can be, the more transparent I can be to you, Lynn, or to Serenity. I think she will want to work with me when she knows I'm more transparent with her. But when there's dishonesty, I don't think people want to work with somebody dishonest. So transparency
Exactly.
play a very key role in reducing conflicts.
Salvation, what I'm getting from you, this is whereby I'm currently reading a book on leadership, and this book just says if you don't define your human values right from the word go, the chances of conflict, the chances of compromise, the chances of just falling apart are very high. So this is the case whereby you communicate your personal values, but also you come together as a group, and we agree on something, on a goal, and we just run towards it despite our different values and just come with harmony. But I know some of you have something to say on this, and please, Teresa or Camila, you can first.
Sure.
Let me go with Camila and then over to you, Teresa. Please do.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Salvation said and also that you just said. Absolutely. I also want to expound on something that Justine said. So, when it comes to conflict, like I said before, we have different prioritizations of values, right? So I may value empathy, I may value transparency over everything, but there may be an organization or a person that values innovation, right? So I'll give an example. If you think about rideshare companies, right? There are in the gig economy, right? Everyone's doing rideshare and making a living, but the rideshare company values innovation. Eventually, there will be automated cars, right? They won't need the gig workers anymore. But I come in on the other hand, like they probably don't necessarily care about, whether people have jobs or not, they care about the bottom line, they care about innovation. But where I come in, or who our listeners come in, or everyone on this panel, is that we have people that are empathetic and that value that, and they're closer to what's happening. And so they're going to build solutions. Maybe it's upskilling people. Maybe it's thinking about what's going to happen in the future. How about it's moving people to entrepreneurship and innovation and things like that. So I think we work hand in hand based on our own values, but we need people that have different values, maybe even have those conflicting values to help to balance it out.
Yes, definitely. There's beauty in difference or diversity. I agree with that totally. And Teresa, and then to you, Antonio, because I see you nodding to that. But Teresa, I want to hear from you.
I just quickly wanted to add, when Salvation said conflict is actually good sometimes, I really, that resonated with me. And then you had mentioned, and I'll reflect back on that, but you had mentioned, Lynn, human values even more, and we actually had to state those human values and to state them from the get-go. And I feel like when we look at the United States, which is where I am today, I sometimes am in Africa as well, but when we look at the United States, and I think we can say this about other countries, there is sometimes division, often division with politically, right? So we have the Republican, maybe Democratic parties, and you'll see it on social media, a lot of conflict. But when it comes down to it, I always think in my soul is our human values are actually pretty similar if we really brought them out and we said, look, are we this different? In the end, we really actually want a lot of the same things, but it's hard to sometimes break those down. We start getting into reacting, and we don't always stop and pause and go, really, what is this person after? Is it similar to me? Do we actually have some of the same, the same values? So I think we have to bring it back to that. And I really loved how you both were talking about, conflict being good, human values, presenting them first. That's where we need to start. So thank you for that.
All right, thank you for highlighting that. I believe the same as well. When you put humans together, when we listen to each other quite in depth, you might find we have some similarity. It's just that we express them in different ways. Antonia, and then I'll come to you, Emily. Tell us what you think about this.
Yeah, I was going to say, so I agree with the conflict and the tension. I don't like to say tension. I like to say healthy tension is good. Because healthy tension has a place, right, in all of our lives and in our workforce, because it helps you to think at your ideas from a different lens. And I'll add that most of the time, to what Teresa was talking about, most of the time the problem becomes when we have a differences of opinion or value. The problem becomes when we personalize that, right? So Camila was talking about somebody may have empathy and somebody may be innovative, right? Those hold the same weight, regardless of the individual, right? So if Antonio is more innovative and Camila is more empathetic, Camila shouldn't look at my innovation and say, well, I'm empathetic. Mine weighs more than yours. They're equal across every individual, which makes that healthy tension valid. And I think what happens is we start losing respect because I take it personal now that you didn't listen to my innovative idea because you're so empathetic. And so now I personalize that. And I've forgotten the common goal is what we're all trying to reach, right? What is the mark we're trying to hit? And once we have that in the forefront of our minds, we start to see each other through that lens and start to realize Camilla's empathy is actually my weakness, but I now get to see that as my strength, right? Because now we start to bridge that gap into where we're going. That's where I mean when I say healthy tension, right? Yes, we are differently aligned in our values and what's important to us, but when we make it healthy, you start to realize, man, I need some of that innovation. And so I need Antonio, man, I need some of that empathy. So I need Camilla in order for us to get to the goal we're trying to get to.
Antonio, that takes a lot of humility, right? Because humans are egoistic. We are naturally egoistic and we love our ideas, we love ourselves, we love what we put there. And that takes a lot of humility. Thank you for sharing that. Emily, I want to bring this to you. How can leaders embed values into decision making in agency?
Okay, pivoting. I was preparing in my head for the other question, but that's okay. Yeah, I agree with everything everyone said. And I think if I could add one thing, it would be like, even if we can't agree on the values, can we at least agree that we have the right to our values? And maybe we could create a system around that works a little more efficiently. In terms of this question, how can leaders embed values into decision-making urgency? I mean, you have to, first of all, know what they are. I think you have to ground in those pillars for yourself and who you are, but then recognizing that when you apply that to a business, you're now operating on behalf of a collective. So again, it kind of ties into the previous question of that challenge of making sure that you're establishing the values that you want your business and your team members to embody and to carry forwards, but in a way that respects and honors them as individuals rather than you trying to inflict your own beliefs and your own perspectives onto other people. Like as Antonia said, we need to have different perspectives to make this all work. Like we have different values for a reason because we're different people. We have different problems that we're here to solve. And when we put that all together, we can create something that's a little more all-encompassing that actually respects everybody's right to be and your freedom to choice. So I think that it also comes back to, I think Teresa was saying about not sacrificing your values in speed. I think Justine mentioned this too, about yes, when things are urgent, and it's just too easy to get carried away in the rush. It's
Yes.
when you're trying to keep up with this world that is already so fast paced that we start sacrificing those values, and then we have the deterioration overall. And I think that's kind of where we're at right now. And I think slowing down and regrounding on those pillars, regrounding on the values, and being in control of our own pace as we step forwards and stepping forwards with purpose, grounding in who we want to be and what we want to represent, can actually help us to cultivate a stronger foundation that is going to be able to support everybody's needs moving forwards.
Emily, you brought that very powerfully, and you made us really reflect on slowing down. It's an aspect that we really have to emphasize everywhere we go in our organizations and the work we do. But I see our precious time that we spend together really dwindling down. But I want to hear from you, Christian. Please close us off. What is your take on this? And Justin, perhaps briefly.
Really briefly, I think I just want to end by saying that everything that we've been talking about between conflict and values, I think are key points to this conversation and how we move forward. I wrote something down because I wanted to be a little intentional with my neurodiversity here, so bear with me. Values are the point. They're, not conflict. Conflict is just a symptom that shows up when values are unclear, unevenly enforced, or flat out contradicted by incentives, right? So we have to really look at what's best for the collective good, and have a healthy system. To Antonio's point, I think a healthy discussion is exactly what we need to have, and we need to have patience and meet each other where we're at. But ultimately understand that, again, oppression is not an option, and values can also cause harm. So we have to be very mindful about where our values are and really prioritize what's best for everybody around us.
That was impeccable. Justin, just one word for a closeout. Tell us one word and we are out.
Absolutely. I would say that you have to know your non-negotiables before the pressure hits, before you're in the pressure cooker. And agreeing with a lot of what has been shared today. But one of the things I will leave us with is it's like Pavlovian. I think of Pavlovian when I think of people. And we can talk about all these things, but if we don't align incentives, right? If there isn't a reward for the values that we're saying we want to establish, then at times falls short. So that's what I would kind of wrap with, is like aligning the incentives with how it is you want to build business, how it is you want to move forward in this newer age. And yeah, thank you for this gather, Lynn.
That was impeccable. And I would say this panel, we could have gone on and on, but here's what I need to tell you. There's more gathers to come, and we look forward to having you back again. Over to you, GatherVerse team. Thank you so much for being here. Our gather as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.